Hello and welcome to the CFUW Resolutions Workshop. My name is Grace Hollett and I'm chairing the CFUW Resolutions Committee. The members of the committee will be presenting throughout the workshop and will be introduced to you at that time. Along with the members of the committee is also Charlotte Aitken, who is our resource person at National Office and attends our meetings. The purpose of the workshop is to give you an overview of the resolutions process. We will be using the document newly revised by the committee and called Resolutions, Information and Guidelines. So the committee will present highlights from that document, but the document itself is posted on the website and will be referred to in the follow-up information and the Q&A document which will follow this workshop. We will also connect with last year's resolutions proposers. They will talk to you about the process as they found it, as they were compiling the information for their resolution and getting the whole document prepared from the intent to writing the proposal statement, the background, and doing the bibliography and the implementation. So I look forward to hearing what they have to say, as I'm sure you do as well. The land acknowledgement will now be read by committee member Monique Searles-Kelly. Monique, please.
CFUW acknowledges that we are indebted to First Nation, Inuit, and Métis people, past, present, and future, and pays respect to them as we gather across Canada and recognize and respect their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationship to the land, air, and sea. Bonjour tout le monde. Voilà, la FCFDU, CFUW, à la FCFDU, nous reconnaissons que nous sommes redevables aux peuples autochtones et nous voulons reconnaître la pérennité de la présence des Premières Nations, des Inuits et des Métis au Canada. La Fédération canadienne des femmes diplômées des universités honore, reconnaît et respecte ces peuples à titre d'intendants traditionnels des terres et de l'eau sur lesquelles nous nous réunissons aujourd'hui. Merci.
Thank you, Monique, and that was a new one for me, so I'd be happy to receive a copy of it from you sometime. It was very, very nice. Thank you. And we now move back to Charlotte with Zoom protocol.
Hi, everyone. I'm Charlotte Aitken, the Advocacy Coordinator at the National Office in Ottawa. And I'm just going to reiterate that the session is being recorded, as was said on the previous slide. So if you're uncomfortable with this recording, you can just turn off your video and then your screen will be relegated to the second page and your video won't show up. And while the presentation is happening, if you could just check to make sure your microphone is muted when you're not speaking, this will allow us to hear everybody clearly and to cut down on background noise. And lastly, if you have any questions, there's going to be a dedicated questions section, but if you have questions throughout, you can send them over the chat and Grace and myself will be able to monitor that, or you can do the raise hand function at the bottom of your screen. We can go over that at the questions section as well, but thanks so much.
Thank you, Charlotte. We'll now move to Bilkis McKinn, and she's going to take the first section of this. Bilkis, and we'll have the next slide, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace, and thank you, ladies. Now, the very first slide here shows a summary of the resolution process and schedule. It's a gentle reminder of the times that prompt us to work on the different parts of a resolution from the beginning, that is the intent to submit a resolution, to the very end. I must say that it pretty well explains the different areas of your resolution and the times that you should have them developed. However, there are three dates that I would like to elaborate on, and that is because we saw that the time was a bit short from November the 30th for the intents published to the time that the resolutions were due. That time was extended until January the 31st, and hence it affected the other two dates, which are the feedback to proposers and the committee and the hyperlinks, which is due on February the 28th. I'd like to go on to the next page too, to the next slide. If there's any need, yes. This is just a condensed version, ladies, of the guidelines that we see. There is one little point that I would like to enlarge on, and that is if we go down to the types of resolution, in an emergency resolution, the big difference between that and the regular resolution is that it is the kind of resolution clubs and feel that, you know, they cannot be delayed. Unlike the regular resolution, there is no amendment process due to the lack of time. And the other part where this emergency resolution is concerned is the fact that in order for it to meet the requirements, a 4/5 vote is required. Thank you. I am finished there, Grace.
Thank you, Bilkis. Okay, are there any questions? You can put them in the chat, or you can use the raise hand function, or you can just raise your hand. And hopefully we'll see everyone. Is there any question on anything so far? Okay, well, I guess we'll, in that case, then we'll move on. So I'll now move to Deborah Track, and she will take the next section. Deborah, of course, is one of our committee members as well. Deborah? I know you're here because I saw you earlier.
Yes, I am. Sorry, I couldn't get my button to unmute. So the first part of the process is developing an intent. Clubs that are considering proposing a resolution should check the CFUW policy book to see whether CFUW already has a policy on that issue, or whether there's a policy that requires an update, or if there is no policy on the subject. The guidelines that are being distributed list questions that you can ask to address in developing your statement of intent. These will help you to define the scope of your resolution and your desired outcomes. But keep in mind, an intent is not expected to be a fully developed, resolved clause. It's just an intent that you would like to look into it. During the development of intents, members of the Resolutions Committee are available for advice. If two clubs are proposing similar resolutions, the committee will contact both, and a joint submission by two proposers could be considered. The intent to submit a resolution form can be found in Appendix A and must be submitted by November 15th. The Resolutions Committee will contact the proposers regarding any observations, such as similarity to other policy, alignment with CFUW mission and goals, etc. National Office will inform all clubs of all proposed intents by November 30th. We can move on to the next slide, which is about resolution development, which is your next step after the intent. In developing your intent into a proposed resolution, research your topic, determine the level or levels of government you wish to address, and word your resolved clause carefully to reflect what you have found in your research. Compose a general statement that will outline the initial wording of the resolution.
Thank you, Deborah. Does anyone have a specific question to Deborah?
Grace, we did have some questions about where one can access the policy book, and Charlotte has put the link in the chat. So it is on the membership site of the CFUW website.
Yes, after the meeting, in a day or so, we will have a message out to everyone, and it will include the questions and the responses. And we'll add to the responses if necessary. And so far we've had a request, and it's in the chat. So if you're looking at the chat, you can see it there. It's basically, will we send both versions of the French and English of the land acknowledgement? The slides, yes, they will be distributed. And Margaret's already mentioned the policy book. And that, I think, is about it. The intent. Should the intent be brief and less full than the resolution? Yes. Yes, the intent, like we plan to do a resolution on, to say what it is, because, you know, we think it's very important because for the following reasons. If it's fuller, it's okay, but it's certainly not your resolution. It's the intent to write a resolution. Does anyone else on the committee want to add to that response?
I would certainly agree with what you've said, Grace. It's just an intent, so it should be probably just a few sentences.
Grace, it's Teresa. I think for people who haven't or are not familiar with the actual guideline document, is there not an Appendix A that has a form in it that people should really refer to when writing the intent? Because that gives you an idea that they're looking for we are looking for rationale rather than deep content at this point. Things like that.
Yes, that's right. And the appendix has been that one has been revised, and I think it's quite clear. Yeah, thank you. Is there any other question? Okay. All right, then let's move on to Margaret, another one of our committee members.
Hello there, everyone, and thank you for joining us this afternoon, this morning, wherever you are. I going to talk a little bit about the resolve clause development, and just to elaborate on what you see on the points on this slide. The importance of the resolution clauses is that they are what specifically will be used for advocacy. Therefore, it's important that the expression of what you want to see changed and by whom is clearly identified in your resolve clause. The point on generic resolve clauses is that those that don't have resolution clauses that don't have multiple action and specific direction do allow for a wider advocacy application. Many of the resolutions on which we base advocacy today were written many years ago, but were generic enough that they remain applicable. The third point on my slide here identifies that while most policies are written by clubs on a new topic because of a passion to right a wrong, I do encourage you to take a walk through our current policy book and look for policies that may benefit from an update, or in some cases, you could combine two resolutions that in fact are in the policy book, but are on basically the same topic. Can I have my next slide, Charlotte? So talking about the background. So a resolution background contains the persuasive information regarding why we need a resolution on this specific topic. This involves research from multiple sources, which must be cited in your background. As your resolution is for review by clubs across Canada, your background should provide examples that are not just one or two province specific. And that concludes my comments. Are there any questions?
There was a question that came in asking if we had an updated resolutions guide, and yes, that actually was included with the blurb in the new Club Action News from when you registered. There was also another link you could click, and you can still do that, and you can get the document. In the meantime, when we send out something after this meeting, we will include the link to it again. Everyone has so much to check on that I think if you got it at your fingertips, it would be easier. So actually, and Charlotte had already replied to that, to the link. Okay. Right, our next speaker is Jeanette Morgans. Jeanette's a member of our committee, and she's also VP Advocacy. So she's in a really good position to speak to this particular issue of implementation development. Jeanette?
Thank you, Grace, and good morning or good afternoon, everyone. And I do want to say to start that Charlotte is just a fantastic resource for anything to do with advocacy. And she is available to every club member. So please keep that in mind. I've really appreciated her support and initiatives during this time. So implementation. Once a resolution becomes policy, it goes to our policy book and it goes to national office where an action package is developed. And that action package is developed by national office and by the proposers, because they are the people who are the real experts on the topic. The action package has a background and quick facts. It has an action sheet, and it has a template letter that clubs can use. Now, clubs can be involved in suggesting how policy can be implemented, even from the very early stages when they get the draft resolutions, because each proposer presents numerous suggestions on how their policy can be implemented. Many of the suggestions, as this bullet says, can be active, but others can be passive. And examples, we all write to our local MPs. We promote the policy issue on social or traditional media. We work together on policy issues at the provincial and regional council levels. Clubs do not get in touch with our federal politicians unless that federal politician is part of their local community, and then they can be in touch. You have to remember that anything that you do as a club with CFUW has to be presented to the membership and signed by the president of the club. We can't just go off on our own. And that's one of the things that our previous advocacy chair suggested, that once upon a time, all the clubs would get in touch with every political person, and sometimes opposite views would come forward from the clubs. So we have to be sure that we have a united front and always are lobbying or advocating for the same thing. So there is a who does what that is also on our admin website, and it tells you exactly how you should proceed in implementing. So I think that's everything I want to say. Charlotte, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, so there can also be implementation of a resolution or policy, you know, not necessarily targeted at the government level, but as well, you know, building community understandings of the issue. For example, the newest policy on Canada's opioid crisis, for example, you can take action by, you know, holding a webinar with another community organization, having a training for, say, naloxone or something like that. So, you know, the implementation of these policies don't necessarily have to always go the government official route. There can also be, you know, community building and coalition building with other organizations, you know, faith-based groups or other community organizations. There's a lot to do on the, you know, community level as well, you know, just raising awareness on that front.
Right, and partnering with local organizations is a really powerful thing to do when you're working on a resolution, a policy. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think as well, we could mention that following the passing of resolutions at the AGM, that the proposing clubs are consulted about the advocacy package that goes out relating to those resolutions that have become policy. And I think that's already happened this year. Okay, thank you. Moving on. The next one is Teresa Habs. Teresa is a past chair of this committee, and actually it was Teresa who compiled the section, the bibliography in Appendix C, and so she's our expert in that area. So I'll pass to you, Teresa, please.
Thanks, Grace, and welcome everyone. I'm not sure I'm the expert on that section, but I can be a resource for anyone who has any questions. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because there's 2 or 3 pages of different types of citations depending on the source. But I had to even ask the question, what is a secondary source? So if you're in doubt as to what primary and secondary sources are, we're looking mostly at primary sources. However, a secondary source can come into play, and it's commentary from other researchers and information that I guess you label it as secondhand. So use what was there. What I've seen in the past is, although it looks complex, if you follow the directions that are there on what to look for to put in your citation about the information of the source, it usually works. And of course, our issue becomes, we want that link to that source to remain as live as it remains with the source. So if you see your if you use this piece of literature for your resolution, I think you'll find it's pretty handy. But I'm always available, and the committee is always available to keep you on track there. So that was Appendix B, I believe. And then there's also Appendix C. And it's the one where you can actually go in and put your resolution in there and expand the Word document. In past, I believe we haven't done it this way, that we've basically done a separate document. So have a look at page, I think it's page 17 where Appendix C is in the guidelines. If not, you'll see it as Appendix C. And it's very well developed there as far as the headings, and away you go. And again, I'm available for any information or input that you might need on that. Charlotte, would you like to add anything?
No, I think your final point about the Appendix C does help, in that it's not a separate document file. You can just input all of your information and it will expand, and you can just save that part of the document.
Thank you. Are there questions for Teresa? I don't see a hand raised. There's a question. Would it be possible to present an example of the process of a resolution and follow it through the timeline from intent to resolution? Perhaps there's a diagram. We can have a look and we can do a diagram for you. I think that I think the information is there, but seeing it in a diagram form is certainly helpful. So we can add a diagram. Thank you for that.
Grace, comment. Also, I would think that that very first slide that Bilky showed that had all of the dates on it is really a good basis for understanding, what do I do now? What do I do next? And we probably, when we announce the resolutions, should probably include that page as a help to people to understand where they're going in this process. Because as Sheila mentions later, this is not a sprint. This is a 6-month journey.
Hey, you're stealing my thunder.
Okay, and I think when 3 of our proposers from this past year come on, they'll also be enlarging on this. Yeah, and we deliberately put the chart, with all the dates sequentially, put that right at the beginning of the document. Otherwise, it kind of tends to get lost. And it's hopefully, and some of the dates, as Bilky's mentioned, have been changed to give proposers a little more time. Okay, so are there any other questions? Okay, then we'll move to the next slide, which is slide 14. No, after that. This one, yes. Okay, and I'm on for this one. So the revision process, there's a bit more to the resolutions than the proposing club or committee writing the resolution and sending it in. Once it comes in, the resolutions committee reviews it. And I've got January 31st because you don't have to send it in now until January the 31st. So we start then right away. And we review and suggest revisions. The decision, though, as to whether or not you're going to accept our suggestion is up to the proposing club or committee. It's your resolution, but we're here to offer suggestions and advice. So until the 28th of February, we work with the proposers who will revise as needed, or as they think is needed. The proposer has to confirm all the links. In your bibliography, you will have links most likely, and they may have been active when you first check them. They may or may not be by the time the end of February comes by. So you have to check and make sure they are. And I think you actually, I think, write in the date that you downloaded. You send that to the chair of resolutions, that's me, and to Charlotte, the advocacy coordinator. Now, last year, there was a special designated email to which you had to send all this. And as you know, or some of you know, the email malfunctioned and we didn't get the intents. We were waiting and thought, not intents, I mean, we didn't get the amendments that were being made. So we were a bit concerned that there was nothing coming in until a club asked, did you get mine? And we hadn't. So we've changed that now so that everything comes directly to Charlotte and myself, and we acknowledge receipt. And you need to check for that. So the proposal, as I said, the proposer confirms the links. And by March the 2nd, the resolutions will be available for clubs. They'll be posted on the website. And then the club reviews, and that's where the amendments come in. They may or may not propose amendments, but you know from the work your club does on the resolutions, some of them do a very thorough study, and they may or may not propose amendments. The amendments should not have any new subject, but should be intended to improve the resolution. And it's sent in using Appendix D, which I won't put on the screen now, but it's in the document. And that's when you check to see if your amendment was received. Make sure that you have acknowledgement of it. So the proposers then review the submitted amendments, and they look at it and say, okay, will this improve my resolution? I thought I had a great resolution, and I did, but maybe this will help it, improve it. And that would be your decision. And you contact the proposers of amendments. You can talk to them about it, and you work with your committee. And by the 15th of May, you should notify the people who sent in proposed amendments, should let them know if their amendment has been accepted or not. And of course, that will all come up in the workshop that we do with you. Okay, that's mine on the revision process. Are there any questions? Sheila, do you have a question?
Grace, there was a question from Liz on if you could elaborate the concept of no new subject added via an amendment, and is adding information considered a new subject?
Grace, it's Teresa. I was thinking of that, and I have what I considered a very interesting one with last year's amendments. And that was the resolution on the small appliances. And if you remember correctly, it was geared towards the small appliances in the home and the right to repair. Then we started getting people asking, well, don't you think we should include electronics? Someone said, don't you think we should include farm implements? And it went on to 3 or 4 other types of appliances or equipment. And the proposers stuck to their guns simply because it was turning into one big resolution that covered the universe as far as that topic went. And it started to be, even the concept started to be unmanageable. So I would say from that example, I learned that that the proposers have a specific goal in mind, and they are allowed to defend that position. I'll leave it with you, Grace.
I think, Teresa, you've handled it quite well. I don't see any need to add to it, other than to say that the University Women's Club of Montreal, with their resolution on opiates, they also had some amendments sent in which were considered to be not on the topic. It was broadening it too much. So some of these proposed amendments that were not accepted could result in other resolutions right? This year, if they wish. Okay, then if there are no other questions on that section, let's move on to slide 15. And is Catherine here?
I am.
Oh,
I was only about 2 minutes late. Okay. So thank you everyone for being here this afternoon. So Grace has asked me to talk a little bit about the policy session and what will happen at the policy session. So as you're aware, last year we made the decision to separate the AGM section, which is mandated by law, where we have to do the budget and the financial report and the articles and bylaws, from the policy, the resolutions, which is not mandated by the Canada Not-for-Profit. So the motion that we passed said that the board would develop procedures for the policy session. At the moment, the plan is the policy session won't look any different at the AGM to the regular AGMs when the resolutions process was part of the AGM, if that makes sense. So next year, the plan is that the policy session will be attached to the AGM. We are planning for a hybrid AGM. It's still very much up in the air, but the date will be the end of August, which gives a little bit more time for the resolution process. And there will be the option to attend in person. We hope that at that point we'll all be allowed to attend if we want to, or to attend virtually. So at the policy session, we will follow the same standing rules that we use for the AGM. Okay, so it won't look any different, but going forward, it gives us flexibility. So Bilkie's mentioned emergency resolutions. If something happened in the middle of the year and it was an absolute emergency, we could have a policy session. We're not tied going forward to this. So before the policy session, we will have a proposers and amenders workshop. And we haven't finalized where it will be, but I would think that, well, even if we have the hybrid AGM, there will be the option for people to attend virtually or in person. So the idea is at that proposers and amenders workshop, the proposers will be able to discuss the amendments that have come forward from the club. And if a club...
Yeah, so maybe I could spray cum on your face.
Oh,
No. How about? Oh my
That
gosh,
was Shelley Jones.
yeah. So I'm reporting that one as well. Sorry,
Same
Catherine.
one,
If
I
we could
think.
just take a pause, and if people could maybe go through to see if they know any of these names, and if they're not, is someone they recognize?
Charlotte, I see a number at the very bottom. Is that somebody's number? Just a number.
just a
Very
phone.
end. A phone number.
Yeah. Does anyone know who Madge Logan? It's normally people with their cameras off, so that's who I'm.
Yeah, Patricia's saying everybody turn their cameras on.
Yeah, if you could please. I know. Does anyone know Madge Logan?
No.
Sorry.
No.
Oh, yes.
I know the name. She was a
Yes.
principal.
Okay,
in,
she's here.
Yeah.
Good. So it might be the phone number.
Hi, Madge.
Okay, I think this is all
Hi, Jackie.
authorized members.
Okay,
Well.
Catherine, your presentation is so popular.
That's scary. This is,
No, I was going to say people must be looking for things to do on a Monday afternoon.
yeah,
Okay,
this is
so
the first time this has happened to me. I apologize, everybody. Yeah, there was no password exactly.
So after that interruption, at the proposers and amenders workshop, there will be an opportunity to discuss the amendments that have come from the clubs, including amendments that the proposers have rejected. So, because at that proposers and amenders workshop, it could be that some modification will be made that will allow the proposers to accept it. Even if the proposers still reject the amendment, it can come forward again at the policy session meeting. So it's not the end. So it's a discussion. If it's modified, then the reworded resolution will be the one that's submitted to Charlotte and to Grace as chair of resolutions, and that will be the one that will be published for the AGM. So, after the meeting, it will be rewritten if necessary. So then the policy session, as I said, will follow exactly the same format as the AGM. There will be balanced debate, which means that we alternate between the mic for and the mic against. The debate will be for 20 minutes. There's the option of somebody putting forward a motion to extend it by 10 minutes. The proposer opens the debate and has up to 2 minutes. Then we go back and forth, back and forth. The debate stops after 20 minutes or when we only have speakers at one mic. And then the proposer has the opportunity to sum up. Now, I think last year we had one of the clubs where one proposer did the opening and the other person did the closing, because I think it's really important to be able to defend your position and to respond to what has been said in the debate. So working together is very helpful there. So then after the policy session, and this is already being talked about this afternoon, the resolution becomes policy. It goes into the policy book, which you can find on our website. And then we get the fall advocacy package, which Jeanette spoke about, which has the sample letters and the items for action. And last year's package was fantastic. And knowing Charlotte, she'll probably have it ready yesterday. So it's there to be used by the clubs because it's great to have the resolution, but what we need to do is resolution goes into action through the advocacy piece. So are there any questions?
Okay, I don't see any questions.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay.
If you think of a question after we finish this session this afternoon, you can always email Charlotte or myself and we'll include responses to those questions.
Sorry, I put my question in the chat box. Can anyone see it? Oh, well, I addressed it to Catherine only. Catherine Wilkinson, you have a question in your chat box.
Question is, at that time, can they refuse to do the changes voted by the AGM? So at the policy session, if the amendment is brought forward, then we would vote on the amendment. And if the amendment is accepted, then we vote on the amended resolution, and the proposers would not be able to reject it at that point because it would be a decision of the membership.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Okay, I'd like to thank all the members of the committee for your presentations this afternoon. And we're now going to move to the next section where we have some of the proposers of resolutions in June past. And I'm going to start with Norma Kuka from CFUW Cape Breton. She's going to share her experiences with us. So if we could have the next slide, and Norma will speak to it.
Charlotte, do you have the slide available?
Slide 16, Charlotte.
I wanted to thank the Resolution Committee for giving us this opportunity to make our comments. And our resolution we selected because we felt there was a need for a right to repair bill in Canada. And we felt it had an applicability to all areas of Canada, and it would tie in with CFUW's goals, especially regarding the environment. Background research, we checked, and the resolution had not previously been submitted by other clubs. We checked to see if we could find any references, reliable references to support the right to repair. And we researched also locally, since COVID restrictions were on via phone and internet, our local resources to find out what was being done in the local area. In writing the resolution, we found that the background material, the guidelines were very useful. The Resolutions Committee, they were extremely helpful, and Charlotte was extremely helpful in answering our questions. One thing that we did discover that I'd recommend for anyone who's thinking of doing another resolution is we found that when we looked at our references and we wrote up our first background report, and I gave it to a third party to check, they read our background report and they said, are you doing a resolution on right to repair or are you doing a resolution on recycling? So we had to go back again and recheck and focus more carefully on our resolution itself. Then, as I say here, one of the main difficulties was finding adequate references. And I almost wish there was something that maybe we could have sent out. I could have given a notice to Charlotte to say, help, does anyone have any more references? Because in the amendments, some of the other CFUW members sent in some very good references. It also took us a while to write the bibliography because we were out of practice in doing proper or correct citations. And the quantity of last minute amendments was problematical, but that's already been addressed. The main advantage is that it gave us the opportunity to develop a resolution we believed was important. It gave us the opportunity to interact with CFUW members across the country, and it forced us to write, think, and use skills that we had all been neglecting for the last number of years, I think. And I must say that I would recommend, not just myself, but our other members would recommend that all clubs submit a resolution at least once, because if you haven't worked on a resolution, you're missing out on something. Very interesting, can be frustrating, but very worthwhile. And as I say, thank you very much to the committee and to Charlotte and to the members at large for all their assistance. And that's all I have to say for now.
Thank you very much, Norma. And are there any questions for Norma at this point?
I do, Grace.
Go ahead.
Norma, you mentioned that you found or others found many more resources than you did. And that was a learning experience. So I appreciate that. But my question relates to, we all kind of remember when we did citations or a bibliography before, and we were at libraries and we were here and we were there. And I think that we are really indebted to the World Wide Web for the way we can research today, which is, yes, we have to have an understanding of what a reliable resource is and what is certifiable. But did your proposers find it easier using the internet?
So much easier. Yeah. And we were remembering when we were in university how we had to type things out, and if you made a mistake, you had to start all over again. No, the internet has helped tremendously.
And I think once people realize that, yes, there are some struggles that you go through with the internet around the keyword searches, and as you said, the difficulties in finding the resources, that's the whole thing about that is no longer a big stumbling block. The research becomes so much, not easier, just more accessible. And I think that's one of the stumbling blocks that a lot of people have about developing resolutions. And when people start to understand the ease with which it's been done compared to when we may have been in university and may have done it, it really makes a difference.
Oh, yes, I agree with you completely.
Thank you both very much. Our next speaker is a representative from University.
Grace, Sorry,
Yes?
there's actually a question from Jane.
Okay.
If you'd
Which
like to, you can unmute yourself, Jane.
Okay, thank you. I would have put this in the chat, but I think it's easier just for me to ask. It's a general question. I don't think we've talked about yet. When we have an advocacy group, and if we're interested in bringing a resolution or an idea to our membership, what is the process then? Norma might know this. Do we bring it to the executive first, and then the executive brings it to the membership? Do we have to have motions to approve a resolution for the intent? That's where I'm not sure.
We just sent our intent in to the resolution committee, and they accepted it or rejected it.
So you didn't present either to the membership in a general meeting or?
No,
Oh,
to the committee.
Well, I feel I have a lot of power. I'm the president of Muskoka Club, and I'm also the chair of the advocacy group. But I want to make sure that I get it out to the members if it's a good idea. So, but thank you.
Well, however, the resolution, when you get to the actual resolution, the resolution comes from the club. So it would make sense that whichever committee within your club is working on preparing the resolution, it makes sense that they would bring it to the membership, bring it to the executive, who would bring it to the general meeting for approval. Because you can't have your own club voting against a resolution that that you're bringing in. So that's. But I'm sure there are variations on how that works throughout.
Okay, yeah, I would probably bring it to the members for sure. Yeah, thank you.
That makes sense. Yeah, I think there's another question. Is it from Marion?
Yes, I'm from North York. University Women's Club of North York, and our constitution, our constitution requires that we take it to the membership first. So the advocacy committee, the subcommittee of the advocacy group brought it to the executive, and we discussed it, and they brought it last November, and we decided it was too rushed, and we asked them to look at it and spend more time on it. They did that, and then we discussed it at the executive in June, and we're bringing it to the executive at the end of this month. So that we've paced it out so that it will be as tight as it can be and as good as it can be. But we have a constitution that requires that. So,
yeah. Maybe I misunderstood the question, but we're a very small club, so we would not have gone ahead with any resolution until we had discussed it with our club on a general basis. And everybody was involved in some way or another.
Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone.
And I know, and it's Teresa Habs, and I know when we've done a resolution in Barrie, we first took it to the executive, and the strategy that we used with the general membership was at the intent stage, you may not have all of your arguments developed. So it may appear rather a sort of a loose idea unless you suggest that this is the process and we will be tightening up things. But is your working statement a request or a resolution that the members can get behind in principle? They may not agree with everything you write down and say. So to go to the membership, if you're thinking you have to have all your ideas developed, your arguments developed, we don't do it that way. We ask for agreement in principle, and then we work with the committee and the executive to make sure that it's as tight as we can possibly make it. So that really helps us get past that. What about this? Oh, you're not mentioning that. What are, all the details that a full resolution could encompass. No, you're not even there yet. So.
Okay. Thank you, Teresa. I'm going to have to move to the next speaker, and I'm going to ask people who have other questions to put them in the chat, and we'll catch them there. And we may be able to answer them at the end of the session. If not, we will compose responses and send out. So we need to move now to the next Sophia, is Chitra here this afternoon? I know she was double booked. Okay, well, this is the presentation that she sent. And some of these points have been noted already, that the resolutions are fodder for advocacy. Many resolutions in the policy book, there are many that we can advocate on. And she suggests that you propose a resolution only if you think there's a pressing need for action or if there's a gap in policy. And to discuss it with people of opposite views, and that would help you strengthen your background, I think, to it. When writing the intent in the resolution, consider the audience, the action to be taken, and the cost of implementation. Now, she's suggesting that you use only primary references, and Teresa has said that that's the preferable type, but we do accept secondary ones as well. Once the resolution is ready, have it critically edited by someone not involved in the process. And I believe Norma mentioned that as well. Consider the amendments, consider them as potential to improving the resolution. Not that someone doesn't like your resolution, but they like it enough that they're offering suggestions. And keep researching the topic in case something new comes up, right up until the time of the policy session, and to keep an open mind. If you have questions on this, I'm going to ask you to put them in chat because we've only got a few minutes left and I need to move to Sheila. Okay, Sheila Stevens from the International Relations Committee. Sheila,
Okay.
you're on.
Thank you, Grace. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sheila Stevens from the International Relations Committee on behalf of Joy Hurst, the chair of the committee, and all of our committee members across the country. So as mentioned, it's basically, the first thing is you really have to select something, that people have mentioned before that's not on the policy book, and it be something about which you're passionate. And why passionate? It's because it's a lot of work. To write this resolution, and you just want to make sure we're upfront at the very beginning, it's a lot of work. Make sure that you have all your ducks in a row and you know that you're in for the long haul. You have to write it, you have to shepherd it, you have to be involved with a lot of sessions, and it's not just writing and then forgetting about it, it's a lot. So you really have to be passionate about this and to discuss it and figure out what to do. As mentioned by Margaret, in our case, we specifically kept it broad or generic to allow a bit of more flexibility with implementation. There was a lot of, many of the comments that we received from the clubs, or not many, just some, were saying, could you make it more specific or could you cover these other topics? But we specifically kept it broad, and then with the hope that some of the clubs might look later on at covering some of the individual topics in a separate resolution to follow. For us, especially, because it was mentioned at the beginning that there are 3 types of resolutions, the normal, the emergency, and to GWI. So in this one, there was a specific thing to keep our resolution language broad, not abroad, but broad, so that it could be used in an international arena. And that might be the case in some of the other resolutions as well. In this case, as I mentioned already, the recommendations from several of the clubs to narrow the focus or to cover the subpoints, we tried to incorporate as much as possible the recommendations from the clubs, their amendments, their suggestions, but in some cases, sometimes they're saying you must strengthen it, other cases they're saying you must weaken it, and we had to try to find a way to balance the inputs from the clubs so that to include as much as possible so that the resolution would pass, but to maintain our focus on what the resolution was intended to do. Next slide, please, Charlotte. Our recommendation as well is to include at least 3 sources to support the proposal. If possible, you could also include something, a contrary view, basically to make sure that you've covered all the bases. Now, this is not always possible given the limited amount of space that we have in a resolution for the background, but if possible in a more scholarly work, you're trying to look at all viewpoints on a subject, so you could incorporate that if possible. we wanted to make sure that we had this broad implementation because we recognize that there's a diversity in clubs from across the country. And how did we function here? We divided the workload as a team. And that would be the same thing as if for our International Relations Committee, or if you had an advocacy group that was doing it, or as well, if you formed a specific resolutions group. We had two people that did the main background and the main research and the main writing of the resolution. We had one person then that organized a system for responding to all of the comments from the Resolutions Committee, and as well from all of the comments and the proposals from the various clubs across the country. And then we formed a small three-person committee to do the initial review of the amendments, to say, okay, this is what we're doing. We tried to figure out what was the best way that we could incorporate them. And then we took our proposed recommendation from that back to the International Relations Committee and say, this is what we recommend for them to consider and approve, and then we went back with that. And next slide. Was that it? And again, it's very unlikely that all the comments can be accepted and incorporated. As I said, some people will say you have to strengthen it. Other people say you have to soften the language. So we tried to find a common ground and keep our focus on the way forward. It's very important, though, to thank all the clubs for their input, because even it takes a lot of work even just to review these. So we were trying to be very thoughtful in the language for the proposals, to explain to them why we could not incorporate them, and to ask again for their support, understanding and support when we went forward with the resolution at the policy session. It was also, we had one person who was the main contact with the Resolutions Committee, and I want to thank Grace and all the members of the Resolution Committee for all their help, and including, of course, Charlotte. For the policy session, I'm going to decide how to do it. In our case, I did the presentation, and then we were expecting a lot of, that there might be some comments or some issues at the policy session, but it worked really, really well to have had the proposers and amenders workshop, because any issues were resolved at that point. And so therefore, by the time we got to the policy session, there was no problem, it was approved. But the resolution cycle itself is long. You must determine how to manage the workload over this extended period. It's not a 100-meter sprint, it's a hurdle. And we chose to approach this basically as a relay, with dividing the work between the members of our committee and their strengths. And one final point to mention is we want to be careful not to be overly prescriptive in the language that we choose to send to government. The governments might know something that we don't, and we want to basically, instead of saying you must do this or you have to do that, we want to still ensure that we are willing to work with government, whatever the decision is, whether they accept the exact recommendation that we've made, but we want to have a dialogue with them and to be part of the solution moving forward. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm going to, first of all, before I go back to some people who were asking questions earlier and didn't get answered, does anyone have a question for Sheila? Okay, I'll move to Isabel Boyle.
Thank you, Grace. I think I actually put them in the chat room.
Yes.
I'm chairing Ontario Council Resolutions Committee, which really parallels national, but obviously is for things that are specific for Ontario. But we've revised the guidelines. They will be up on the website. And we did try to parallel with national, but our dates are different because our AGM is in May as opposed to the end of June. So I'll leave it there and not take up your time, and thank you.
Well, thank you. And with respect to the date of the AGM, even if an AGM and policy session is held in August, we still didn't want to lengthen out our process so that we would be expecting clubs to be working on the resolutions over the summer, because we realized that by June, many clubs finish their business sessions. So we did give an extra 2 weeks for the actual composition the writing of the resolution. And that was at the request of Norma, and that extended a couple of other dates forward, as Bilkis explained earlier, but we couldn't see the process going on indefinitely into the summer because we figured it wouldn't work. Okay, are there any other questions? There are some comments, and we will do up a paper on this and circulate it to probably through Club Action News. And I think there was a question about including the comments that Norma had made, and we will be including, at that point the others haven't spoken, and we will be including all of that as well. Is there any other question that anyone would like to ask? Sheila.
I just have a final comment. It was specifically a bit of a challenge for us as the International Relations Committee, because we were also doing our normal work and trying to shepherd this resolution forward. So my recommendation would be that you not have it just an issues and actions group and you're trying to do a number of different things, that you try to form whoever's doing the resolution would be able to focus solely on the resolution. So you have a resolution group composed of the people that you need to shepherd this resolution forward. And just a clarification as well for Jane, when I did a resolution a couple of years ago, I was both the president of the club and I wrote the resolution. So it was very important for us to go forward to present it to the executive to say this is what we're proposing, to get the buy-in from them and as well from the club membership and moving forward. So how you do that is something, but as you say, you certainly don't want a case where you present a resolution and then your club votes against it. So I was very pleased that our club voted for the resolution that we wrote.
Okay, thank you. And Isabel, we can include the link to your information as well from Ontario Council, if you like. You could get back to me on that. Okay, well, I would like to thank everyone, and I'm really pleased with the presentations and the discussion. I hope you found it helpful. And if other questions come to mind, just send me an email, graceh@nl.rogers.com, or send it to Charlotte, to one of us, and we will get back to you. So thank you all very much, and we look forward to some exciting resolutions this year again.
Thanks,
Okay.
Grace. Thanks all members of the committee. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to the proposers.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, sounds like that's someone else.
My dog, the bane of my life. Okay. Molly.
Grace.
Molly.
Yes, I'm here, Bilkis.
Okay, I just wonder, Grace, I don't know who, I just wanted to say this to the committee members. Thank you very much for allowing me this process. At the same time, regarding the lady who asked for a pictorial representation of the first slide that Teresa said, that was very nicely, and I thought that was very nicely explanatory. I just wonder, having taught kids of different learning styles, perhaps seeing for this person would be better than reading. And I'm wondering, even though I'm at the stickman stage in drawing, if with Charlotte and whoever can help, if there's any way we can do those dates pictorially or that kind of thing. And if perhaps in the pictorial representation, there's further injection of somebody who would speak to, like, make whatever we're saying like an intent, put in a few words, the language is such that is appropriate for an intent or something like that. So could we consider that? Or I know it sounds like too large a task, but I am wondering, you don't want that person to just leave without not having a better understanding of those nice, bold dates in the template. But if it could be understood differently, I wouldn't mind pitching in to help there with Charlotte, if that's okay.
Good. It's a flow chart, I think, that's
Yes.
being requested. Yeah.
Yes.
We can easily do that, I think.
Okay, okay, that will be great, Charlotte.
I think that'll be good. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
And we'll circulate it among the committee for
That's right.
action.
Yes.
Perfect.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, ladies. I have to run, if you don't mind.
Thank you. And I have to
Thank
get ready
you.
for another meeting. So
Okay.
All right.
Good night. Good
Thank
evening.
you.
See you. Bye-bye.
Bye.